Well, hello everybody, and welcome to our new project here with myself, Fiona, Olivia, and Tina. Now, you know who all we are and why we're here, but there's a reason why we're here. We've declared ourselves the Ministry of Psychic Weather, and we're going to try and find a way to guide you all through this turbulent future that we're all heading into, because it's pretty apparent to anybody paying attention that we are entering into very, very interesting times. And while there are sort of like psychological and cultural and other faculties involved, don't forget that this is ultimately a spiritual battle at a period of spiritual transcendence. And during the course of this program, which will be semi-regular or regular, depending on, it's almost like an emergency broadcast. We do it as you need it. And this is why we're going out this week, because we've noticed tremendous Renfielding around the place. And also other things like pathological individuals who overuse word salad. There's all kinds of strangeness. And this is usually a sign, from my sort of like pseudo psychological psychic studies of something bubbling in the zeitgeist. And I know a lot of you agree with me about that in the Renfielding. It's usually a simmering of an energy force. Now, this is so it's quite a serious show in a lot of ways. We've gone for this sort of Southern Gothic theme because I don't know, it just seems appropriate right now. There's something about it. It's almost like the deep south of the USA kind of like is a twilight zone anyway, and it kind of feels very twilighty right now. So I just want to say good evening, Fiona, Olivia, and Tina.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So we are basically the main sort of like board of directors of the Ministry of Psychic Weather, if you want to call us that. But we will have other people on, and some weeks one of us might not be here for lots of reasons. So, there's that kind of thing going on. But basically, this is what you're seeing going forward. Now, Renfielding. It's been very apparent lately. I'm going to go around. Well, this is not my show now. Remember, I'm just like an employee here, so it's not my show. So we're going to go around the board, I think, mainly, and ask if we've seen any Renfielding. I already mentioned that I've seen tremendous Renfielding outside, and it was so bad. And it's a weird thing that does happen, that when you see it in the supermarket or something like that, I start Renfielding myself. It's almost like you have to get away from them. And the last 2 days, I've noticed those tremendous Renfielding among the general public. So they're obviously they're agitated about something. So, what do you guys think? Have you noticed this too?
Mostly on the internet
In myself?
for me. Not so much in the external world, but Danes are very reserved, and I live in Denmark, and I don't really go out in public that much anyway. But the internet, for sure, I have noticed an increase of it.
One of those things that makes you housebound, because I don't like going out so much unless I really have to anymore. And it's like you don't want to seem like you're judging the world by what you're doing on the internet, but it kind of forces you out there. And I find myself like, you saw the flag that I made recently with the rune and the script. That was almost like my psychic defense that I was kind of like scribbling down one day, and it was almost like two walls I was building, like one for like the internet Renfielding and one for the real life Renfielding. It almost felt like that at times. So I guess the question is that when we notice it first, and we can talk about our own special way of looking at this thing, like Fiona and Olivia have a good social sense for it, but they're both astrologers, and Tina with the runes and things like that. Okay, first I'll start with the two astrologers. Is there anything happening that's causing this in the astrological world?
Yeah, there are quite a lot of things going on at once, but we're getting very close to eclipse season. And eclipses, because it involves the moon, lunacy. So that would be the main thing. And also Saturn in Pisces, I think, is making people feel very depressed. A lot of people quite depressed and bleak, and then they take it out on other people.
Yeah, exactly, because it has a quality of being too maybe melancholic or too dreamy or too detached from reality. On the other hand, certain reality checks or moments of awakening to some unpleasant truth might also be in the cards. And on September 5th, we have Mars squaring Jupiter, which could also be a little bit of a difficult internal struggle going on. With Mars currently in Libra, we would rather not confront things head on. So there might be some sort of passive aggressiveness to it as well. And I guess that's especially the case when we're talking about online discourses, I think.
The lunar eclipse that we have on the 7th, there is a focus on religion because of the star that is making a conjunction to. So like Abrahamic religions and people in public office. And certain countries are going to be affected more than others because of the visibility of the eclipse. Europe, it's partially visible. Australia and the Middle East, they seem to kind of get the most out of the eclipse.
The moon has this interesting quality. Yeah, sure, Luna and the lunatics, but it also has a sort of like contemplative, almost beautiful quality with Selene in that kind of aspect. So the moon kind of brings out the best and the worst in people, I think. It definitely has such a deep effect on them. And you just mentioned Pisces. Now, Pisces is two fish. There's a kind of an interesting sort of like under the water element of Pisces. Like the subconscious, the deep dive into subconscious. Would that be correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I think what it would suggest to me is, and I'm actually doing this myself, is that the sort of lunacy aspects of that would probably lead to greater sort of like Renfielding, while the rest of us who are trying to avoid it will probably be taking deep dives into the subconscious world.
Yes, absolutely. And another thing that might be also in the cards is people who deal with addiction or struggle with substance abuse issues. They might sort of relapse or maybe feel tempted again, or, Pisces is such a delicate sign in a way, because it doesn't, this is something that Fiona once said, and it's so apt, because Pisces has difficulties dealing with the harshness of the world. And I think that is such a perfect way of describing Pisces. It wants to retreat. It wants to retreat into the dream world, into the other world as well. And Pisces can be incredibly psychically gifted, but also totally deranged and fluctuate with the emotions. And basically what is said about Gemini, that they don't know what they want and they fluctuate, that is very, very, very Piscean, actually. That is a typical Pisces trait that doesn't get acknowledged, really, but it's definitely there, and it's on the emotional level. So this might be a bit of a dangerous thing for certain people who aren't grounded.
A good grounded spiritual path works wonders for Piscean people. So that's what everyone should try and focus on at this time, instead of dissolving into addictions or some kind of madness or fantasy. Work with your ancestors and work with your ancestral path.
Yeah, I think that those kinds of people, it's one of the things that actually organized religion would probably be much better for them than going into the deep New Age thing, because at least there's a structure there that can actually ground them, even if it's like to a specific type. I'd imagine that would be better than actually like going off and into kind of like crystals and all that kind of other thing, believing there's some great solution there.
Interestingly enough, Pisces is the symbol for Christianity, or rather the fish, the age of Pisces. So I think it's a double-edged sword. But yeah, I mean, the New Age is ripe with lunacy. Sure.
And ultimately, it's basically escapism and fantasy at the end of the day. Most of it, like some of it would be okay and rooted in something. But it seems to me that ultimately people I know that are into it, it's an element of escapism there. They may be really nice people, decent people, but I notice that they have a tendency to go into there's a sense of idealization almost. Like it's almost like when someone idealizes a partner, a romantic person, or a friend, they have that same idealization towards these sort of like new age spiritual ideas that these are absolutely the answers.
Tina, are the runes reflecting the astrology this month?
Well, there's a lot of focus on the home. I still have to upload the video, but there's a lot of focus on the home, and it can really mean many things. I mean, is that your spiritual home? Is that your physical home? They're probably kind of the same thing anyway. Or they should be, at least there should be a connection there, a strong connection. And if there isn't, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a problem in the sense that you're not going to be able to feel grounded in your home. So you need to find something that in your home, whether it is a corner, a room, or your entire property altogether, is yours. It cannot be too much influenced by the outside. And I had that happen to me, actually, 2 weeks ago, when all that kicked off, with all the protests everywhere and that Scottish girl. I found a pendant that I always wanted to have. It was a Thor's hammer. And I started wearing it, and almost immediately, I felt this rage in me that wasn't really there before. I am a choleric person, and I realized that about myself, but it was constantly there. And I was in a bad mood all the time. I was ready to just explode at people. I was ready to do things to people I never really think of in everyday life. Somebody looks at me the wrong way, I'm starting a fight. Somebody bumps into me on the street, I'm throwing a punch. That kind of stuff. I had to take that pendant off because it is connected to the Turisas rune, Thor's hammer, and I cannot have that rune on me. I turn into a monster, an absolute monster. I have to take that off. I can never have that rune on me in any way, shape, or form. And I know this about myself. As soon as I took it off, that got a lot better though. And there was something in this month's rune reading that stuck out to me very, very much. And is that what we should leave behind, like whether that is an idea or a course of action. It was symbolized by the Manas rune. That is social convention, that is social standing, meaning that you cannot be fighting or living even by the rules that are set by society right now, because society is quite frankly insane. You cannot follow these rules. There is no reward for following these rules anymore. You have to live by your own rules. Forget about society. And that's why I focus on your own home. Focus on what you can do for yourself, because to do it for the world, community building right now is going to be infiltrated anyway. There's wokies everywhere who are demon infested. There are new agers everywhere that are, well, ripe for demon infestation. It's just not a good idea. We are in the Kali Yuga. This is the Iron Age. This is Ragnarok. I could go on, but I'm so ready for Kalki to emerge from the mountain, bring down the comet, and start over again. This world is not worth fighting for anymore. Well, it is, but for a large majority of it, it needs to end.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the Scottish girl, because we should really talk about this, because it's had an enormous effect on all of us and all kinds of people in different ways. But before we get to that, and you mentioned the home, and it's funny how these things take on a life of their own when we start talking. Like we're talking about the moon, and I'm thinking of the moon card in the tarot. And that's really what does a home represent? It represents stability. And Western society is incredibly unstable now. It's shattered, and the moon card is about that. It's like walking through the dark night of the soul. The road that you take goes between the two towers. It doesn't actually lead you into them, so you're still wandering. Behind you is the subconscious world that's done its job. The ocean and the lobster and the crab emerging from the sea, and then the dog's howling in the night, or with the red fields, and as like Tina said, the ones that weren't worth saving. So it's interesting that there's a very stronger lunar aspect here than we probably would have thought of before the show started. But yeah, it's funny how they take on lives of their own. About the Scottish girl, we'll all have a say on this. That affected me deeply. I don't care what the particulars behind that was. There was something about that girl with the knife and the axe in her hand that was almost like a tonic that was badly needed to shake things up.
Yeah. It broke a lot of people out of their slumber, that's for sure. Rightly so, they were outraged by it. Because a lot of people have been sitting on the fence and keeping quiet for a long time, but now, they're not quiet anymore.
It definitely highlighted how physical it can get, the physicality of it. Two weapons like that, chop, chop, and slash, slash. And also those two weapons, they're very symbolic of Europeans. The axe and the knife. Yeah, it's a knife, a kitchen knife, I think she was holding, but it very much resembled a sax. The sort of ritual dagger that a lot of Germanics had on them. The Gauls too, I'm believing. I'm not even sure anymore, but yeah, it reminded me very much of that. And I think for a lot of people, whether they're aware of it or not, some ancestral memory got awakened there for a moment.
Yeah, I think this girl became an archetype in that moment. She channeled something way bigger than her. She channeled the rage of so many girls and women today, but also in the past, because this has been creeping up on us. And I think pretty much any woman, ask any woman, and she will, unless she's totally super woke, but because then there's, of course, this whole denial issue. But I think every woman will have some sort of experience with this particular type of specimen, let's say. So,
yes, and also the one group demographic was on the forefront of this change in society in the West are women, either by the pathological gender benders or by the predatory Abrahamics from the East. The women are on the front line, and the men are just not stepping up to really protect them. So she represented that as well. I think that's why she got so little flack, even from the wokies. She got so little flack. What you were saying there, Teen, about the two weapons she was holding, she had a camping axe, and on the other side of a camping axe is a hammer. It was the smithy and the forester who built Europe, cut down the forests and built Europe, and the knife also as well for hunting and everything else. So it's like the Hobbit, or the Lord of the Rings. Frodo, the smallest, the most unlikely person, will change the destiny of the West.
Something that I found really interesting was that the girl had the same name, and she was the same age as a little French girl that had been murdered. Did you guys see that? It was a couple of years ago. There was a little 12-year-old, and she was kind of kidnapped on her way home from school and murdered. And it's just so interesting to me that the Scottish girl had the same name and she was exactly the same age.
Oh, that is interesting. You cannot put down these archetypes. You just can't. But yeah, what Tina says is right. This is it. This is why this show exists. This is the Kali Yuga. This is the Ragnarok. This is the Bay's prophecy. It's all happening now.
Yes, and I believe that instead of getting fake enraged about some notion about a patriarchy, which is total BS anyway in our world. So maybe there's some truth to it, but not in the West, for heaven's sake. But instead of getting enraged about non-issues like that, women should be effing angry. They should be raging with righteous anger and fury at what these people are doing, and that is the effing patriarchy. Where they are from, that's what they want to claim we have here, you know, suppression and oppression and all that. No, we are free. We are free to shake our butts in shorts that are too tight, you know, on stage. We are free to scream into the microphone. We are free to do anything we want. We are not oppressed, but what is imported into our world, that is oppressive and absolutely horrible, dangerous, and backwards. We should be angry. This is what we should direct our anger at, not some fake patriarchy because men are this and that. Come on.
Well, and the funny thing about that is that it is mostly women that are importing them. That picture of I'll never forget that picture of the women in the UK Parliament, those four uglies sitting in a row when the victims of the grooming gangs were speaking and they were sitting there like,
Yeah.
that is burned in my mind. And these are the women that are pro for all this. Now I need to be quiet for the sake of diversity.
Yeah, they're totally, and when they say anything, it's like totally Quranic. It's absolutely, it's mocking and belittling the victims at word salad. That's what and you see it all again. You know, what is the woman? The homemaker. We Europeans, this is the only home we have. We built this out of nothing. We built this out of the wild forests and the untamed lands. Our ancestors pulled stones out of the ground and built walls in order to grow agricultural fields. You know, this is the only. Is literally when you say home, they're trying to take our literal European home from us and hand it over to people who couldn't make their own homes work.
Mm.
And so, you know, and where they had an enormous advantage with climate and everything, and we couldn't have that. So it's all, you know, we're hearing stories all over the place. I know we're getting political, but I'm sorry, this is part of the world we're living in. This, you know, we're not here to like dream up unicorns and stuff like that. This is a serious thing we're doing. But they're bringing people from these what they call the developing world, the third world, and putting them in houses that our people would have got. And it's a microcosm of the macrocosm of Europe. They're taking the European home and giving it to them, that they've contributed nothing to it. And they're only here because with their numerous advantages in their own countries, they couldn't even make it work there. So what chance would they have here? It's just an insult to us.
Yeah, and they don't feel they have no love for these lands. Our ancestors' bones are in the land, their blood, their stories, and people that just come to Europe, they have no connection to it. They don't give a damn about it or any of the people that live there. So ultimately it leads to a very sick society.
Yeah.
Yes, and also the dominance of mediocrity in positions of power is horrible. I'm facing the same thing in my personal life, and it's just infuriating. I mean, people get jobs that others would have deserved. I mean, they're also Europeans, but still the pronoun people, you know, and zero competence and utter mediocrity, utter malicious NPC syndrome. But they're in power and they empower each other because they're scared to death of people like us, people who are different.
And they
won't take it up the behind, you know.
You see Graham Lenihan arrested today, you know, for saying that men don't belong in women's sports. You know, and you know, here's one of the few men who actually go on about this, and yet he's treated as public enemy number one for making a biologically honest statement.
At the end of the day, you know, all of this is just to serve as an agenda, a certain agenda, which is a kind of communist one. Make everyone equal or pretend that they're equal, and then you can control everyone. Take away the leaders, put NPCs into positions of power. I mean, it's all a plan.
And
and there's someone. Sorry, Thomas, go ahead.
It's demonic. It's demonic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as someone who was born in a formerly communist country, And I was a kid when Romania collapsed, the regime collapsed. But this image of the formerly incredibly feared leader, I mean, people were terrified of neighbors ratting them out and all kinds of stuff. So to see the image of him, in front of the wall and what happened next, this was etched into my memory forever. And even as a kid, I felt the magnitude of that. And now reflecting back on it, it's like the natural course of things. Those people who are at the top right now, who feel cushioned and protected and pampered, they won't be forever. They too just serve an agenda. And at the end of the day, communism never worked in any form. And this type of ism, whatever we have now, isn't going to work either. But it's just that I think it's going to cause massive damage. It already has. But
When you were talking...
Sorry, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yes, but my last thought is that natural law will always prevail, always. So they're just fighting against a hurricane that's coming.
As you were talking about communism, I had to pull two rules. Interestingly enough, it is again wait, where's the camera? The Otala rune that I pulled out, and the Wunyo rune upside down is like the removal of all joy. The removal of all joy out of the house, out of the home environment, which also is your countries, your land, your homelands. Everybody mixed with everybody. People are Lego blocks that can be clicked into one another. We all know that it's not true. Cultures are not all equal. We're not the same. And some cultures are simply best left to their own demise in isolation.
See, this comes from great Christianity. See, communism ultimately comes from Christianity. It's rooted in the same idea that everyone is equal and anyone who has a grievance automatically must be given the platform, and then everyone else, again, the mediocrity thing must be brought down to that level. That's what gets me the most, and it's sold as humanitarian, but it's not. It's the exact opposite. Human being, like the human evolution is directly related to struggle and overcoming hardship. It's not by taking down the achievers to the same level as the I'm not talking about like handicapped people. I'm talking about like the mediocre types. That Christian thing, blessed are the meek, has always pissed me off.
Mm-hmm.
They shall inherit the earth, and they're making it happen now. Like Tina was saying, those four ugly women laughing at the victims of the grooming gangs. You see, like, weak men. They're meek, not in the sense that they're sickly. They're meek in the sense that they're psychologically just not up to scratch.
Equality.
Niveling cowards, really.
Yeah, exactly. Mediocrity is cowardice.
Yeah, equality doesn't exist in nature.
Yeah.
It's an anti-nature concept.
Yeah. Even in highly organized structures like beehives, you still have tremendous hierarchies. I mean, when people go on about caste systems and stuff, when you do have organized societies in nature, they're very much along the caste system that you get in like the Vedic world and we had in the Nordic world and in the Celtic world. It's just how it was. That's how it is, because there's a functional level that you're meant, just because you're a drone doesn't mean you have to one day become the queen. It's, or a worker or, a soldier. This whole thing that everyone is basically entitled to every position and the ones at the top have to step down and give it to them. This is it's the most unnatural thing you could actually possibly, deal with. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't. It's even affected things like astrology, because now everyone wants to hear that they can be whatever they want to be, and nobody has any concept of their own limitations and, you know, stuff that you will struggle with in life. I mean, that's the way that ancient astrologers would read a birth chart. Oh yeah, this is going to be difficult. That's it, you know, you have to deal with that. But
That's why John Dee was risking his life when he was doing Queen Elizabeth I's birth chart, because that could have been very bad news for her. Luckily, it wasn't. But literally, those days, astrologers were putting their lives on, you know, the royal intelligentsia. They were putting their lives on the line doing the charts for royalty.
yeah, can you imagine doing Henry VIII's chart?
Oh God.
Didn't the Sun King, I forgot his name, the 14th of France,
Louis.
had one of his readers? Yeah. Mm.
I wasn't aware of that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Well, lots of ancient astrologers were, you know, put to the sword. So it wasn't uncommon at all for them to literally have a job that is a matter of life and death. Yeah.
The Scythians, they used soothsayers, and if the soothsayers got it wrong, they would put them in an ox cart with straw, bind their hands and their mouths, and set them on fire.
Jesus.
Nice.
Well, that meant you only got the really good ones. Then you didn't get
Yeah.
any. You didn't get any chancers or you bullshitters.
You didn't
Exactly.
get the Lionsgate fans.
No.
I mean, imagine, I don't know, a 17th century astrologer, or even much earlier, let's say a Babylonian astrologer. My lord, thou shalt ascend through the Lion's Gate into 5D consciousness. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what Tina was saying then, that's another thing that comes up. It's funny, like I see myself as kind of like the archetype guy. And Tina had mentioned Louis XIV in France. I, in the last year or so, have been developed a fascination with St. Joan. And here we have this girl in Scotland, and everyone is comparing it to Joan of Arc. It's, you know, it's amazing how her archetype, you know, after all these centuries, is still very powerfully held within people. That's because she was really a pagan, by the way, if you look into it.
Yeah, the archetypes always rise and you can't kill them. So there's always going to be a solar hero that comes along as well, which is reassuring to think about.
Or well, it would be a hero too, the Apollo Luciferian enlightenment explosion in the mind of men and humans. Like that's what's so lacking right now, the clarity of vision.
Yes, but you know, like I said earlier, natural law will prevail, and maybe I don't know if this was the tipping point or something that indicates that we are close to a tipping point, but I can feel it coming. I can feel the point coming where the pendulum starts, you know, receding from the direction it was in before. The hysterical harpies that brought in those you know, policies, or welcomed them rather. They didn't make them, but they welcomed them. And the exact opposite of this type of female is going to be, you know, the one that is sort of sounding the horn. You know, it's over. The gig is up, I think.
A lot of those women meet bad ends as well, I've noticed.
Yeah, they do. Speaking of the solar, or the, you know, the this, I hate to use the word salvation, but the actual, you know, you know, the riders of Rowan appearing at dawn, you know, in terms of that, they love giving the false ones out. There was a gobshite at work last week, and he says to me, "So Thomas, did you hear the aliens are coming next year?" I go, "What?" He goes, "There's an alien spaceship coming."
Oh.
Of course, he was talking about this Atlas thing that's supposed to be an alien spaceship. That I think a lot of the normies, sort of like the ones who pay attention to this stuff, I think some of them are subconsciously Renfielding over this, that they actually think it, because they see they've allowed them to believe this stuff is real. You know, after years of ridiculing it and mocking it, they've now said to them, oh, that they've now given them permission. Like, I know shitheads who would be like, oh, for years ago, would, oh, UFOs, oh, UFOs, oh, this kind of thing. And now they're like, yes, it's really true. It's fascinating. There's something going on. You know, they give them permission to like this. And so I think now that I think you know, there was the one major conspiracy theory in the theory sense I always had time for was Project Bluebeam. Do you think they're going to try to pull off something like that?
What is it again, Thomas? Can you remind us?
Fake alien invasion.
Oh, okay.
Or a fake appearance of a savior.
Oh,
Like
right.
Yeah.
a fake second coming of Jesus. That always sort of made sense to me, because it has happened in the past when the communists took over Cuba. The CIA sailed submarines in Havana Harbor and projected the Virgin Mary onto the clouds to try and make the Cubans think that the Virgin Mary. But they knew exactly what it was when it was being. The technology wasn't up for it. But the drones and everything now, they could pull that shit off. You know.
Mm-hmm. And holograms as well, because I remember a few years ago watching this thing on YouTube, and they projected a hologram of, was it Tupac, on the stage, and it looked like he was real, like completely there. So I'm sure that their technology is much more advanced, and they could totally pull that off.
But how long could you keep that up before somebody figures that out?
Well, a lot of people are very stupid.
That's
Look how long the QAnon thing went on for.
But a lot of those things they do are kind of like, you know, they want to rush in a police state before people will wake up and realize they're being duped. So by the time they realize they're being duped, they can't say anything about it. Oh, it's a load of bullshit. In the same way they did that with the needlecraft. They had the needlecraft in their arms right up to the, you know, foghorn, leghorn, before they allowed them to start thinking, this is a load of shit, isn't it? You know. So this is the game they play. They play almost like poker with the normies.
Yeah, they're doing that again now. Keir Starmer is saying that we need a digital ID in the UK to stop the boat people.
It's like, you know, that's like saying, you know, I've no food in the kitchen, I'm going to buy a new car. You know, it's like, it's irrelevant to the actual point they're trying to address.
Yeah.
Everything is gaslighting. I often wondered about, like, you know, gaslighting must have always existed. It must have always existed, right? I wonder how, although we're very aware of it today, I wonder how in ancient times, you know, like our ancient ancestors, well, God, I think for starters, gaslighting would have been immediately, they would have been aware of it. But you must have had, like, sort of occultic leaders in the ancient past who probably figured out the certain things they could actually say, or natural effects where they could say, behold, I made this happen. That was probably what gaslighting was back then.
Yeah, appropriating, for example, natural events and saying this was our God, his wrath, whatever. So I think a lot of grandstanding has always been, you know, modus operandi for lots of powerful people, always.
About how to keep control over people, you know, without them to have them accept tyranny. I don't know if you guys know the full history of Caligula, because he's often sort of portrayed as kind of a comical figure, and it wasn't really that big of a deal. It was mostly funny, but it's not true at all. That is not true to reality at all. That guy perfected psychological control to a degree. Is absolutely horrendous, the history. I don't think I can actually say it on YouTube because it's so graphic. But it involves the violation of, on a massive scale, by the way, of all the daughters of the patrician class, the ones that were actually in power underneath him, his senate. and he made the fathers watch, and under threat of armed guard, by the way. So then later, if they would say something like, oh, all of a sudden you develop a sense of morality after what we did to your daughter and you watched and did nothing.
Trauma-based mind control. Another one that you hear stories about, he's always portrayed as a sort of like a buffoon, is Nero. And he played his fiddle while Rome born. Nero was nothing of the sort. He was like this intellectual, this like, he was basically a very intelligent ruler, knew exactly what he was doing. And but even things like he was at the first exhibition down into the Nile to locate like way deep into sub-Saharan Africa to explore the source of the Nile. He had built enormous construction and building programs, and he was the first one to realize that if the Christians took over, they would destroy Rome. And he was the one that realized how dangerous they were, and they were dangerous because they destroyed the empire eventually. And this is another one too. Toward the end of the fall of Rome, and I found it out as well, they stopped believing in the oracles and they stopped believing in the auguries of the priest class. They started to think it was nonsense and it was bullshit, and it was only the sort of the crazy elite of Rome that actually believed this shit, and the people started turning to things like the Diamanibus cult, which was sort of like the worship of dead ancestors, and it was a huge thing in Rome, massive. And I went to see a Diamanibus exhibition in this museum there, and you could see it was the beginning of Christianity. That a lot of the ones, it was like Scientology, the way it affected the elites in Hollywood recently. It was like that, but it ultimately led to the destruction of Rome. They started looking away from the sky spiritually and started looking into the depths of the earth and communicating with spirits, and you know what that is.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned Nero too, because actually Tina and I were having a conversation about Nero a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying that I think a lot of the stories that they told about him were lies. It was a smear campaign.
Oh yeah, there was an actual Roman policy. It was called something condemned to oblivion, which was meant all your good works would be written out of the Roman record. In fact, the great historians like Pliny and Tacitus were actually experts in this, and they did that to him. Like, we don't even know where Nero is buried. They even named a false tomb that he's buried in. And also, this was the whole thing, condemnation to oblivion, and it was used by the Roman establishment to destroy. Like, they kind of done that in our time with Napoleon. I was raised, I don't know how it is for you guys in Europe, but I know me and you, Fiona, we were raised that Napoleon was this nut job tyrant who, it was a great thing that he was defeated at Waterloo. And then you realize he was the guy trying to stop the end the royal control of Europe and actually bring peace and prosperity. And he did for a long time in some of the areas where he did it. And the completely different story of this little sex mad midget that was an idiot and a tyrant. And he's been a modern version of having his name condemned to oblivion.
Yeah. Even his death mask. I saw on the internet recently his death mask, and he looked very handsome and like chiseled.
Oh yeah. I mean, he definitely, he was Corsican, but he was actually Italian, Bonaparte. So he was like this sort of like handsome Italian guy from a handsome like family. So that would have been very sort of appealing in its day to Northern Europeans, this kind of suave Mediterranean sojourner.
Yes, and he wasn't a midget either. He wasn't too short. He was pretty average for his
time. Yeah, he was 2 inches taller than what you needed to join the French army. So he was slightly taller than average. Yeah, I know, it's incredible. And they're still afraid of him. You saw that film with Joaquin Phoenix they made of him. It's absolutely awful. And you can see how the Anglos are still terrified of him to this day.
Yes, and on a much, much more harmless level, the same thing is being done to Elvis.
Yep.
He's, the buffoon, the fatso, the drug addict, the kitty diddler, whatever they say of him is BS, total BS. It's made up. It doesn't stand up to historical reality. The people perpetuating the myths are constantly contradicting themselves. But yeah, I mean, people will believe anything if it's just repeated often enough. And then they think, oh, it's well documented that Napoleon this, that, and the other. No, it's
Yeah.
not well documented at all. It's just often repeated. That's a huge difference. Most people don't seem aware of the difference at all, which is case in point, they're morons.
Yeah, well, our Elvis died on stage at Las Vegas as a sellout in cabaret world. No, he was using Las Vegas to rebuild his career. He was doing stadium tours all over America and Canada, and some of the final performances are some of the greatest vocal performances of his life. And yet, that was always written out. They have a vested interest in destroying greatness.
It's funny that you mentioned the Anglo-Saxons earlier, that they have a fear of Nero, but they don't seem to have that fear of Constantine, who is only known as Constantine the Great in the Anglo-Saxon world. In Italy, he's not known as the Great, he's just known as Constantine, who was an actual psychopath, a family annihilator who walked over the corpses and the graves of everybody he knew, including his own family, his son, his wife, who was boiled alive.
Yep. Yeah, it's not even the Anglo-Saxons. It's the sort of like the Anglo-Normans, the ones who killed all the Anglo-Saxons in England and sort of developed it. We're told the Magna Carta and the Doomsday Book and how they were so wonderful they are. And they're the ones who caused all the shit in England and Ireland and everywhere. They were the ones who they killed all the Anglo-Saxons in the north of England. So it was really them, and they were the ones who was like tied up with the Prussian royal families and everything.
Yeah. 1066 was devastating for England. They even stopped the ordinary English people from hunting in the forests and things like that. And it's hard to see that it ever, it didn't recover from that really. But the Normans were.
What's happening in England now is the harrying of the north again, because you look at where all the imported gangs are preying on the flower of England. It's all in those northern cities. Interesting, isn't it? Like the Bradfords, the Manchesters, Liverpools, all those cities. That's where the Rochdales, all the Burnley, all those cities, Sheffield. So the harrying of the north is now happening in a new way. Through this imported, I would call it as a catastrophe.
Yeah, imported army.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is an army, and it's an invasion. It's nothing else. It's an invasion, period.
Yeah. So we're not going to leave the show without, positive reinforcement. And this is not about, airy fairy, everything is wonderful. Because ultimately, if you have to survive, you have to fight to survive. It doesn't happen for free. So we're all going to throw our own, 2 cents into the mix of spiritual and other tools and psychic tools and ways of thinking and ways of doing to, make sure that we're the ones who arrive on the other side of this. The tribes do survive. Well, they will survive, but we want to get through this with as little pain as possible. And so who wants to start first?
I'll go. You can never give up, ever. If you give up, it's over for you. It's game over. You have to fight until the bitter end, and there's just no way around it, ever. If you don't, then that is surrender. Whether you mean it as such or not, it will be taken as such, and you will be treated as such. You can never give up.
That's what I would like to say too, kind of echoing that, is the meaning of life is to fight to the fucking death. Never give up. And just remember that there are other worlds beyond, and we will go to those, and that's reality. This is like a realm, and we have to fight.
Yes, I see it the same way, and to me, this is a training ground, or like like an army training program, and you're not supposed to. I think you're not supposed to be too attached to it either, which is kind of weird because, of course, it affects us every single day. But I believe that a certain level of detachment from the normie world, from whatever's going on, whichever puppet is saying, what, you should be able to detach yourself from it and put your energy into what matters to you, your people, your land, your cat. Yeah.
I would I would go back to the pagan concept of sacrifice. You get nothing for nothing, and you've got to sacrifice something into it, and and the sacrifices in general, you don't have to generally do massive things, but maybe we should be proactively, winding down our lives in order to get through this with less baggage. Things like, I don't know, become more grounded in things. Don't be so materialistic. I mean, all these sound a lot of cliches, but they are true. And instead of sacrificing your time to Amazon box sets or Netflix, sacrifice that time to something that could actually, like I've been doing crazy things. Like I've been buying hard copy books and burying them in boxes under the ground in airtight containers, because that's how worried I am about what will the sacking of Europe will entail, sacking of the West. And I think communion with nature is more important than ever right now, because the nature was around before this began. It's around while it's happening, and it'll be still there, even in an AI, choronsonic world. It'll still be there afterwards.
Yeah, and forging bonds with people offline, community bonds, it's really important now.
And getting rid of all the toxic people in your life, and that's so important, because they're just dead weight to drag you down. They're like the drowning man. They'll take you down with them psychically. And even if they're in your family and stuff like that, or you're friends with them, it's not good. This is a battle of survival. It doesn't mean you're being mean or cold. In fact, you're probably helping them in some ways, because maybe they might wise up and be that way. But yeah. So I think we'll wrap it up now. So that hour went fast, and so thanks Fiona, Olivia, and Tina for that. And I think we're flying blind at the moment of the first show, but I think we'll develop a groove as it goes on. So I hope you all enjoyed it. So good night, everybody.